To a Fox News alert. Get this. Michael Flynn's attorney files an emergency appeal to get the judge overseeing the case kicked out, booted.
It comes as a declassified email from Susan Rice, the one she sent to herself, raises new questions about what the Obama administration was up to, Steve.
That's right, Ainsley. Griff Jenkins is live in our nation's capital. Right now, Washington, D.C., up in the Bureau. Griff, it is unusual that a person would send themselves an email on the last day of the job. So what exactly was she up to, and what exactly does Michael Flynn's attorney want?
Well, this is very interesting. A lot to unpack. Steve, Ainsley, and Brian, good morning. Let's start with Flynn's attorney, Sidney Powell, turning to the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, seeking the immediate removal of Judge Emmett Sullivan and demanding he or his replacement grant the government's motion to dismiss the case, saying Sullivan has no basis to continue prosecuting Flynn.
The law is clear. He doesn't have authority to grant it. He can't appoint a prosecutor himself. The case is over, and his bias is so egregious he should be removed from the case.
Now, as it stands, until the federal appeals court responds, Sullivan has set oral arguments for July. Meanwhile, as you mentioned, acting DNI Rick Grinnell declassifying at the request of Senator Ron Johnson more of that Rice email that was already declassified. But this newly released portion, which had been marked top secret, describes then FBI Director James Comey cautioning President Obama on passing information to then incoming National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. Here is what Rice wrote. Comey said he does have some concerns that incoming NSA Flynn is speaking frequently with Russian Ambassador Kislyak. Comey said that could be an issue as it relates to sharing sensitive information. President Obama asked if Comey was saying that the NSC should not pass sensitive information related to Russia to Flynn. Rice says, Comey replied, quote, potentially. President Trump yesterday had this reaction.
They broke the law. What they've done to General Flynn should never happen. What they've done to the presidency and what they've done to this country can never be allowed to happen again to our country.
Now, Representative for Rice issuing this statement saying Ambassador Rice did not alter the way she briefed Michael Flynn on Russia as a result of Director Comey's response. Now, this all comes, guys, as there are more requests for unmasking names coming from Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Lindsey Graham as it pertains to Trump campaign officials. So there is more to this story. Steve, Ainsley, Brian.
Well, thanks, Griff. Also, too, it's important, K.T. McFarland, who was for a while the deputy to Michael Flynn until she was tripped up as well, she says in looking back at the briefings that she got from the Obama administration, they brought up North Korea, they brought up China, they brought up ISIS, but they never brought up Russia. So maybe that potential problem that they thought that Michael Flynn had with Russia actually played into how they were briefed, which fundamentally is bad for our national security. The problem Susan Rice has with the truth really rang true over the 8 years she was in the Obama administration, and it seems to have shown itself in the last months with the Obama administration. For example, now that we see this email, we know that she did discuss Russia, Michael Flynn, and security issues on transition, but when asked about it in 2017, she said this on PBS.
We've been following a disclosure by the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Devin Nunes, that in essence, during the final days of the Obama administration, during the transition after President Trump had been elected, that he and the people around him may have been caught up in surveillance of foreign individuals and that their identities may have been disclosed. Do you know anything about this?
I know nothing about this.
Right. Ironically, today, she's calling out in an editorial Donald Trump on blaming China as if the president is making up blaming China. But I digress. With Susan Rice is going to be very interesting because now there's calls for more information from the Director of National Intelligence, the acting director, Rick Grinnell, to release more people, more information about who was unmasked on those last few weeks. This thing is going to get a lot bigger. And again, Susan Rice wants to be the running mate for Joe Biden. Good luck, Joe.
All right, so let's break it down in layman's terms. That interview with Woodruff on PBS was in April of 2017. She sent the letter to herself a few months before that, the email to herself at the end of January on Inauguration Day, talking about that Oval Office meeting that happened at the beginning of January on the 5th. She said in that interview months later in April, I don't know anything about them trying to surveil Michael Flynn. So then when you read that email she sent to herself, it says, actually, I'm hearing the interviews in March. I read an article in April of 2017, so it was either in March or it was in April. So the point is, it was after she wrote that email to herself. So at the beginning of January, she said that Comey was concerned that Flynn was speaking frequently with Kislyak, and Obama, as Griff said, Obama says, so the National Security Council should not pass along sensitive information about Russia to Flynn. And Comey says potentially. We don't have evidence that he shared classified evidence, but we're concerned about the level of communication. That is very unusual. The question is, why didn't they want information shared with Flynn? Is it because they knew he was going into the next administration? Is it because he and Obama didn't get along when it came to Iran? There's information they didn't want Flynn to have. Maybe it was because they were listening and they were concerned. Or is it because they didn't want him to know information that he could potentially share with the next administration? There's so many questions here, Steve.
You're absolutely right. You know, Judy Woodruff asked a direct question, and Susan Rice just flat out lied. She was in the Oval Office along with Joe Biden, among others, and they heard them talking about how they were surveilling Michael Flynn and the Russian ambassador. So she just told a fibberoo, no doubt about it. But when you read the actual declassified memo or email that she sent herself, what's interesting is it's in the second paragraph where the president, she says the president made it very clear, we got to do everything by the book, and then circled around to that later. So in other words, by memorializing what she remembered from that meeting, essentially she was saying, we got the instruction from the top down, we had to do this by the book. There are some Republicans who are suggesting that when President Obama said by the book, he was implying that perhaps law enforcement in that room right there, we're doing exactly the opposite. Meanwhile, a spokesman for Rice, we should point out, says that it shows the Obama administration handled the Flynn situation absolutely appropriately.
Can I add one more thing, Steve? Yeah. Can I add one more thing?
Go ahead.
It's interesting why she wrote that email to herself on Inauguration Day. If she wanted to take notes from that meeting, why didn't she take notes or send that email to herself right after the meeting on January 5th? Lots of questions.
Well, that's a really good point. But keep in mind, you know, when we heard her on that TV show say, nope, I know nothing about that. When a person is on a TV show being interviewed, you're not under oath. And so you just are going to say what you're going to say. You know, it's just one of those things. We ask questions all the time. And are the people telling the truth? You hope so. But maybe not in that case.
She wants all the Kislyak-Flynn documents out, all the transcripts out. I'd like to see that, too. Meanwhile, all 50 states are officially on the road toward fully reopening in this country. Get this, Connecticut